Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cass, and today we are going to be doing the end of year book tag. I've got my mug of the day. Isn't it so cute? So cute. And it says, "Oh dear," inside the mug. I got this at Target, by the way, so check yours. I got it this year. They might still have it. I have my Christmas tree up. I have my book globe here, all my ambient lighting. I have my favorite candle going. The scent is called Winter from Bath & Body Works. It has like a hint of pine, and it's just, I love it so much. And yeah, I don't know who started this tag, but I was inspired by my friend Poppy. I will link her down below. Go check her channel out. She's amazing. I love her so much, and she's just the sweetest person. And yeah, we'll get into it. I will put all of the questions down below. If you would like to do the tag, please do it and then tag me so that I can come watch it. And let's get into it. Also, if you're not subscribed, hit that button below before we get into it, because YouTube tells me that like 80% of people who are watching my videos aren't subscribed. I'm glad you're here, but hit that button. It's a really easy, free way to support my channel, and I would really appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. Okay, the first question is, what was the most disappointing book of 2024? For me personally, I think I'm gonna have to go with a novel love story. I love Ashley Poston's other two books that I've read, which was The Dead Romantics and 7 Year Slip. I really liked both of them. Like, I rated them, I think 4.5 or 5 star. So I was super excited about this book because not only do I usually enjoy her writing, but I love the concept of it. It just fell flat for me. I rarely get, like halfway through a book and then DNF it. But this one I did. I couldn't relate to the characters. I just wasn't feeling it. The plot wasn't plotting. And I didn't feel any kind of like tension in the romance. I wanted like a little more romance spark happening, like chemistry. There was no chemistry. It just wasn't for me. However, I do still really enjoy Ashley Poston, and I will pick up her next book. The next question is, what was an underdog book? Okay, I have a few. I have 3 for this. The first one is The Silence That Binds Us. I've never heard anyone else talk about it. I can't even remember why I picked it up, but it was so good. It is YA, but it doesn't really read like YA. The only thing that really makes it YA is that we're mostly seeing this from a teenage girl's point of view. And so it's a YA perspective, but she's in high school and there's a lot of adult content in it. Check the trigger warnings. There are a lot of trigger warnings in it. It's about an Asian American family who lost a child to suicide, dealing with all of that in the aftermath, and then how racism and socioeconomic status and other things have like affected their entire family. I went in pretty blindly and I ended up loving it. It was like a 5-star, 6-star book for me. It will stick with me for a very, very long time, and it has amazing messages, and I would 100% read it again. The next underdog book that I haven't seen anyone else talk about is The Last Love Note. I will sing this book praises, and I will probably reread this book again, maybe sometime next year. But Emma Gray wrote this fiction novel about a woman who lost her husband and is raising their child and grieving the loss of her spouse and trying to go back out in the world as a single mom who is grieving and figure out life after loss. And even though I haven't lost a partner to death, I read that book in the aftermath of losing my brother last year. So I was grieving. I am a single mom already. And there's just so much I could relate to about trying to grieve while your children are also grieving and having to hold it together because you're the only parent for your children in the home. So you have to show up for them, and how that puts an extra strain on a grieving parent and just how hard it is. It's really, really hard. Emma Gray, who wrote the book, in the author's note, she talks about how she actually went through this. She lost her husband and raised their child after he was gone. It's very realistic, very authentic. You can tell that the author has been through it. What I thought was extremely well done was how to show up for people who are grieving. There is a love after loss subplot happening throughout the book that is actually just so well done and so beautiful. But there are moments in that book that I still think about that just encompass grief and how to show up for someone who is grieving when you care about someone and they are grieving. So if you've been through a devastating loss, especially if you're a single parent, or if you know someone, like someone close to you has had a devastating loss and you want to have more empathy for them or know how to show up for them, I would highly recommend this book. It just overall was so beautiful. 5-star book for me. I've never seen anyone else talk about it. Lastly, I'll mention the Prison Healer series. This is a YA fantasy series, but it doesn't read super YA. It's actually, I would say maybe more like early adult. It doesn't have like spice in it, but if you like The Throne of Glass, you like a lot of fantasy with a subplot of romance, then I highly recommend this series. I loved it. It's the first series that I became kind of obsessed with after reading Throne of Glass. Just nothing was hitting for a really long time. And that was the first series that I got really passionate about again. I've since read lots of other series, but I just don't think I don't think it gets enough love. I think it's a really, really good series, and it's completed, so you can read the entire series. And yeah, I highly recommend it. The next question is, what was an overhyped book that you read? I would say a book that got a lot of hype, but that I didn't think was like, you know, a top tier book was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Now, don't come at me. I didn't think it was a bad book at all. It was a good book. I enjoyed it. I think I rated it like 3.75. The cover is really cute. I mean, I really think the marketing did a good job on this book and the rest of her series. But for how much attention it got, I'm not sure that it's worth the hype. I think there's a lot of other books out there that just deserve way more hype than that book. So I'm not mad at it. It's just probably doesn't deserve all the hype it got. That's just my opinion. Okay. You guys, sometimes when I get really passionate and excited about something, I forget to breathe. This is like a real problem. You know that saying in books that's like, oh, she let go of a breath she didn't know she was holding or whatever. But I do that all the time. I legitimately do this all the time. I have apnea. Like I have sleep apnea, so I have to wear like a machine at night to make sure that I breathe. And I do it during the day. It's like some kind of weird, I don't know, like it's some kind of trigger is like suppressed in me and I forget to breathe. And I've noticed that when I get really excited about something, I talk and talk and talk and I forget to take a breath. So I'm literally out of breath right now because I'm just like love talking about books, and I got really passionate about these questions and some of the books that we're talking about. And so yeah, I'm out of breath. So if it sounds like I've been running a marathon, it's a book marathon. It's a marathon of talking about books. Okay, the next question is a book that surprised you. So the first one is Magnolia Parks, the Magnolia Parks universe. That world, that whole series, the 5 books that are out, rocked my world. I have put off reading that series for so long because I just didn't think that it was my thing. I didn't think it was something I was going to enjoy. It seemed like a genre I generally don't read. But after my dad passed away in November, I needed something that I thought was going to be kind of like mindless and just easy to listen to and easy to get into and nothing that I'd have to like think about too hard. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read the Magnolia Parks. You know, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see what all the hype is about. And it'll probably just be like an easy thing for me to binge, a world for me to escape to, but not as complex as like a fantasy world where I have to pay attention to details, right? Man, that series took me by surprise. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I was starting a 5-star series for me and my tastes. But let me tell you, those books did a number on me. They are some of the most influential books I read this year. One of them made me sob. We'll get to that question later. And I love that series. I love the Magnolia Park series. The 3 books are complete. There's 2 in the Daisy Hates, and there's more coming, so it's not done. But from what's out right now and like the 3 books that are considered Magnolia's and BJ's story, it has concluded, and I love their story. It's everything to me. It just took me completely by surprise. The other one that totally took me by surprise was Binding 13. And this one I was not going to read. Again, for the same reason. I was just like, don't think it's my thing. I don't read a whole lot of, well, I didn't until this year read a whole lot of contemporary romance. Anyways, I wasn't going to pick it up. I wasn't even going to read it as a filler. But my friend Sarah, over at Sarah's Cozy Corner, she read the first book, Binding 13. She ended up enjoying it more than she thought she would, and we have very similar tastes. And she kind of piqued my interest in it. And then one day I was looking in my Audible Plus catalog, and Binding 13 and Keeping 13 was in there. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a listen. I'll see. It took me a little bit to get into, but man, I loved those 2 books. another duology that I gave 5 stars to that I did not see coming. I wouldn't necessarily give the first book 5 stars, probably more like 4 stars, but the series as a whole was 5 stars for me, that duology. Check trigger warnings, and for that one, I highly recommend the audiobook because it takes place in Ireland, and the narrators on the audiobook were Irish and had the Irish accent, and so it just made me feel that much more immersed in the world. And when I went back and like would go to mark quotes in the actual book, I was looking at some of the words. There's no way I would have never known how to pronounce those words. Never would have known how to pronounce them. So definitely recommend the audiobooks on those two. But yeah, never saw those coming. So sometimes, you know, the overhyped books, sometimes they're a disappointment. Sometimes you read things because of FOMO and it just doesn't work out and you're kind of like, oh, I shouldn't have read it. I knew I wouldn't like it. But then other times I discover books and series that I would have never read if they hadn't been hyped up, like those two. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. Okay, the next question is your favorite book couples of the year. Now, one of these, I can't say the couple because it would be a spoiler for one of the series. So I'm only going to give one of the names in the couple. So if you read the series, you'll know the couple I'm talking about. But if you haven't, that way you won't be spoiled, okay? So one of my favorite couples is Rune Dannon in the Crescent City series. Him and who he ends up with. I love that couple. That's one of my favorite couples. And in the third book, they released at the beginning of 2024, Crescent City House of Flame and Shadow. Can't believe I just remembered that. Was released a whole bunch of like exclusive bonus chapters depending on where you bought the book. The Target edition of that book had a bonus chapter with Rune, and it was my favorite. It was so good. Like more like a short story or something, but like they could write a whole novella about those two and I would eat it up. I love them. Okay, my other favorite couples are Magnolia and BJ. I really love Magnolia and BJ. Just those two together and the evolution of their relationship ends up being really beautiful. So when you're first reading it, you're like, this is so toxic. Why am I reading this? Why do people like this? Why are we writing books like this? But as you keep going, there's an enlightenment, there's developments, and it's worth it. It's worth it, and I love BJ and Magnolia. I have 4 for this question. So Rune and his partner, Magnolia and BJ, Will and Tessa from the Infernal Devices. I just love Will and Tessa. I just love them. I really love all those characters, but yeah, Will and Tessa have my heart. And then finally, Johnny and Shannon from Binding 13. I love them. I love the way they showed up for each other. I love the way that their relationship develops. Yeah, I can't really explain more without giving away spoilers, but love that couple. The next question. Your favorite main characters of the year. Okay, I really love Kiva from the Prison Healer series. She's a healer. I'm a nurse. I'm a healer. I'm a nurturer. I could just relate to her. There was a lot of things in there. I just loved her. I loved her personality. Yeah, I really liked her. Okay, Kira from The Spell Shop, which I loved that book. But Kira is like this orphan who lives in the library and loves books, and books are her friends, and she has like a little sidekick named Kaz, which is like a plant with a personality. There's just so many quotes in that book where we're inside her head and she's saying what she's thinking, and she's an introvert and I'm an introvert, and there were just so many things where I was like, yes, girl, yes. I really liked her a lot, and I could relate to her.
We're going to pause right here because I completely forgot to mention Carrie Soto is back. Javi, the dad in that book, he was everything. I loved him.
And then finally, I can't just pick one, but honestly, I just love all of the main cast of The Last Hours. The Merry Thieves have this like bromance that's just so heartwarming, but I also love Cordelia and Lucy, and it's so good. I just love all of those people. They are people to me. Next question is new favorite author you discovered this year. So probably I have 3 here. So one is Cassandra Clare. I knew she's been around. Like I've been meaning to read her books for a long time, but this was the year that I finally read. So I read The Infernal Devices and The Last Hours. 5-star series for me, both of them. I love them. I love her writing. I love her worlds. I love her characters. Yeah, so can't wait to read more of her stuff. And I'm just dying for her to write another trilogy that comes after The Last Hours, like with those same characters, that same like genealogy and world. Please, please do it. Next would be Sarah A. Parker from When the Moon Hatched. Her writing resonates with me so much. I just think she's brilliant. We think very similarly. She's a beautiful writer. I love the way she puts her books together. And I got to meet her this year when I was in Salt Lake City in the fall. And she's just like a genuinely kind person. Yeah, I just adore her, and I will pick up anything she writes. And I cannot wait for the sequel to When the Moon Hatched to come out. And then finally, Coco Mellors. I also met her in Seattle this year. And I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and I have her other book, Blue Sisters, but I haven't read it yet because I've heard that it'll probably be quite triggering for me where I'm at in my emotional state right now, so I'm waiting for the right time to read that book. But I adored Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and I adored her writing, and I got to go to this book signing and listen to her talk about both of her books, and I hadn't even read them yet, so I hadn't even read any of her books. I got to hear her talk about her life, her experiences, her writing journey, talk about both her books, kind of some background information and some inner thoughts that she had. And then I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and I was like, this is the book that I wish I wrote. Like, I want to write a book like this. I thought it was brilliant. She's a beautiful writer, also a beautiful storyteller, like Sarah Parker. And yeah, I just loved it. So I will definitely pick up anything she writes. And she was also fantastic to meet in person. The next is an author that didn't work out for you this year. And I'd probably have to say Laurie Gilmore. Again, I had a good time reading her books. They're cute. They're great. Like, I rated them like 3.75 and 4 stars, I think. But I probably won't pick up any more of her books. As cute as they are, there's just other authors I would prefer to read, even when it comes to filler books or like fluff palette cleansers. I don't think she's a terrible writer by any means. It's just, I'm just not crazy about it. What is the happiest book you read this year? So I read a lot of fantasy books that tend to have a lot of tragedy in them and a lot of action. And then I read a lot of literary fiction and memoirs, both of which are like character development and seeing the arc of a person or a character through hard times. So a lot of them, they end up like happy, or they have happy points, but they're not like happy books per se. I would say a book that just gave me like the warm fuzzies the whole time, that I just really, really enjoyed, just made me happy, was Love Light Farms, which I just read at the beginning of December as part of my Christmas romance reading vlog. If you haven't watched that, go check it out, especially if you like rom-coms or want to pick up a holiday book, because I read a bunch of them and I'll tell you which ones were worth it. But yeah, when I think of like a book that just made me happy, that just gave me the warm fuzzies for the most part, that's what it would be. Okay. What was the saddest book you read this year? So I would say there are 2 books that just left me sobbing. I've actually read a lot of sad books, or a lot of books that just had really sad things in them. But when I think of like a sad book, of something that just like rips your heart out, makes you feel devastated, for me, if it makes me cry, because I don't cry very easily in books. So I have 2. One is Sorrow and Bliss, which is another kind of underrated book, I think, that I haven't heard enough people talk about. But it's like a literary fiction with a romance subplot, but it heavily focuses on the journey of mental health and someone who has a mental health disorder, how that affects their romantic partnership, but also like their family and everyone around them. But also you go through this journey with the main character who has the mental illness, and you gain empathy for like what she's going through and how hard it is for her. Oh man, that book it was so good. It was so good, but I cried so much in that book. And then secondly, I'm going to go with Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. Just so much heavy stuff happens. And overall, I loved that book. And it had a happy-ish ending. Oh my gosh, that book. Just so many sad things in that series. And in that 3rd book especially, it just broaches so many really tough topics. And I feel like it's done so realistically, and you can feel the character's pain because you're in their head. She writes like from their point of view, and you can just see like exactly what they're thinking and feeling. And so you feel like you're thinking and feeling it too. Man, that book ripped my heart out, and I bawled. I sobbed And that will also be in a reading vlog that you guys can watch after Christmas where I finish the Magnolia Park series. So yeah, the most frustrating book you read this year. I mean, it's hard because, like, for instance, the book that disappointed me was also a book that frustrated me. Like, a novel love story was so frustrating to me because I just wanted so much more out of it. But I would say a book that I finished that left me feeling frustrated was not just the book, but just the whole situation, which is that I binged Spark of the Everflame, or the Kindred's Curse Saga. Sorry, that took me a second to remember what it's called. It's a 4-book series. 3 books were out, and the 4th book was supposed to be coming out at the end of July. So in the middle of July, I started the 1st book thinking by the time I get done, the 4th book will be out, like it'll be great. I ended up loving that series, still love that series, binged it, read all 3 books back to back, and then waited anxiously for a few days for the 4th book to come out. And then we were told that there was a publishing delay and the book still hasn't come out. It's been 6 months since it was supposed to come out, still hasn't come out, and we still don't have a release date. And that 3rd book left us on such a cliffhanger that I was so frustrated that I did not have the 4th book to get into. Like, I've calmed down a little bit since because I've just moved on to other books. But when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I'm just like so mad that I read all of them back to back expecting the 4th one to be readily available, and then it wasn't. And then especially since it ended on such a cliffhanger and then having to wait. I mean, at this point, I think we're going to end up having to wait at least a year compared to when we were supposed to be getting it. And so that just, that leaves me frustrated. But I do know that that was partially a problem with her going from indie publishing to a traditional publisher. And I'm so happy for her that she got picked up by the traditional publisher, but it's just super frustrating that this happened because of it. It's just, I don't know. I don't think it was very fair to the readers, and it's sad. I'm still going to be picking up the 4th book, though, when it comes out, because I need to know what happens. And if you haven't read that series, it's so good. And last time I checked, it was on Kindle Unlimited. The best book adaptation of the year. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, and I don't read a whole lot of books that are adapted. So I read Black Cake last year. Loved that book. And Hulu had a special series adaptation for that book that came out this year. And I watched the series and I really, really liked it. So I highly recommend the book and the series. I believe they're coming out with a 2nd season of that series, but the first series completely covers covers the book. And then after that, I think it's going to be like creative liberties. But I know the author worked in conjunction with the producer, so I thought it was very well done. It was really good. Favorite covers of the year? When the Moon Hatched and The Crimson Moth. And probably if I had to pick just one, I would go with Crimson Moth because I loved both the US and the UK editions, like the covers, plus Fairy Loot did a special edition that I loved, plus Owlcrate did a special edition, and all of them were just stunning. And I did a short where I showed all of the covers. Like, I have too many editions of that book, but I can't get rid of any of them because they're so pretty. Super excited for the sequel to come out because that cover also looks beautiful. But yeah, I just can't bring myself to get rid of any of them because they're so pretty. I will link that short down in the description box if you want to check it out. A book you haven't stopped thinking about. I have a few. There's a few that I keep going back to. So one is Magnolia Parks. It was just the right book, the right series at the right time for me. It just hit me so hard. And also, I only finished it like a few weeks ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. The other book that I can't stop thinking about is Piranesi. Can't really explain to you why. It's best to just go into that book blind, but it's just so good. It's like a literary fiction meets mystery meets philosophy. It's good. And it's not super long either. But yeah, I definitely want to reread that book sometime. So good. When the Moon Hatched, because I love that book. Hi, if you're new here, I'm obsessed with that book. I'm obsessed with When the Moon Hatched and Throne of Glass. Those are like my 2 favorite series. Love, 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 love them. I've already read When the Moon Hatched twice, and I'm in the middle of annotating it right now. So that'll be my 3rd time of going through it. And no regrets. I love that book. Finally, this one surprised me, but actually, I think about The Hour of the Witch quite frequently. I think that it just resonated with me more than I realized, and the ending surprised me, and I love when I'm surprised by endings. It just went somewhere that I wasn't expecting, but I also loved it. I was like, yes! So I actually think about that book, and I think about the ending of that book all the time. Can't really say much more without giving away spoilers, but I'm still thinking about it. Okay, an unpopular book that you loved. I'm not really sure on this one, but I'm going to go ahead with When the Moon Hatched because I feel like that's gotten a lot of mixed reviews. I feel like people either loved that book or they hated that book. And, you know, it's very different. Like, it has a glossary. It's very high fantasy. It's very complex. It requires a lot of dedication, a lot of like focus. It's not for everyone, but it's for me. I love that book. Obsessed. A book you thought you'd love but didn't. I think on this one I'm going to have to go with the Atlas Complex. I read the Atlas 6 series this year. So I read Atlas 6, the Atlas, what's the second one? Paradox, the Atlas Paradox, and then the third book was the Atlas Complex, which was released this year. So I read it as a new release. I still don't know how to feel about it, okay? I didn't hate it, but I just didn't love it. Like, it just wasn't what I want. I don't know. I just was expecting so much more out of it based on how complex and dynamic the rest of the series was. I think that maybe I just like needed a little more, but I didn't hate it. It's really hard for me to critique it. I can't say why, but I just thought I was going to end up loving that series and loving that book. Like, I was hoping to love it. It felt like it had so much potential, and I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. To this day, it's the only book that I finished that I still haven't rated because I just like can't decide how I feel about it. But it's definitely not love. Okay, the next question is the book with the most unique concept you read this year. So, sorry for the repeat answers, but When the Moon Hatched, so unique. The world, incredible. The plot, so unique. The magic system, unique. Like, yeah, it's so good. Piranesi, same thing. Just a really unique, complex, interesting world and concept of a book. Interestingly enough, I read When the Moon Hatched and Piranesi back to back. So I read When the Moon Hatched and then Piranesi, and then I went into a slump. Some of the best world building I've ever seen. And then I would also say The Unmaking of June Farrow. That book has an element of time travel, and it's very meticulously like plotted out. It's one of those books that you get to the end and you're like, oh, well, now that I know, I want to go back and reread and see if I like missed things the first time. So yeah, very unique. Not that time travel is unique, but the kind of like magic system surrounding time travel, very unique. It's a good book. I recommend that book. The next question is a book you read this year that you would reread. I'll reread When the Moon Hatched probably multiple times. I'll definitely reread the Everflame series, especially leading up to the release of the fourth book, just to refresh on everything. But I just loved it, and I just have a feeling like Throne of Glass that I'll get so much more out of it even the second time around. So I definitely have that on my list for a reread in 2025. And then I would sometime in the future reread Infernal Devices and The Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare, because they're going to be comfort reads for me now. I just love those people. I love the place. I love the world. I love it. I love the whole thing. I will reread both of those sometime in the future. Okay. Goodreads 2024 reading goal reflection and your reading goal for 2025. So I do make a Goodreads goal, but it's mainly so that I can easily track what I'm reading and how many pages I've read and when I read books, and to easily like put reviews in and stuff. But it's not something that's like set in stone. Like, I don't take it too seriously. So my goal for this year was 150 books. I already met my goal. I'm going to exceed it by the end of the year. And I'm going to keep the goal the same for next year. However, I'm going to add some specifics. So I want to read 150 books, but I want to read 6 books physically. I really want to get back to reading physical books because I love to do it so much, but I just don't have a whole lot of time. But I'm going to try to carve out the time because it brings me a lot of joy. And I'm in the middle of setting up my reading and filming room, and I'm going to have like my own little like library and reading chair and stuff in there. So I'm going to really try to make it a priority to read at least 6 books physically, which is basically like 1 book every 2 months, which is very doable. And they don't even have to be long books, right? But I just want to sit down with a book in my hand and actually read 6 books this year. So that's my goal. A book you wish you got to this year. The Women by Kristen Hanna. I was looking forward to this book. My friend got an ARC of it and just raved and raved and raved about it. I've seen nothing but raving reviews about it. I love Kristen Hanna. I've loved all of her other books, but they also gut me, like rip my heart out. And I've had too many real life things happening that rip my heart out. I just knew that like my soul couldn't take a Kristen Hanna book, and I was waiting to be in the right space. and I haven't been there yet. So I have it, I own it. It's on my TBR. I will get to it probably in 2025. I just have to think about my mental health because books really do affect my mental health. The last question is, what will you prioritize in your 2025 reading year? So in 2024, my non-numerical goals for reading were to DNF more books and to do more mood reading. So they kind of go hand in hand, but basically I just didn't want to waste time reading books that I wasn't really enjoying, especially when I had other books available to me that I want to read. And my TBR is never ending. I have an unlimited supply of books between what I own and my library card. Like, I'll never run out of books. So there's just not enough time to read bad books. Like, there's too many good books out there. So I started a practice of DNFing early and often, where it's like, if I'm not feeling it really early on, I just don't read it. And it doesn't mean that I won't come back to it. It just means like I must not be in the mood for it, or I'm not going to like it. Either way, it's not time to be reading it. Some of them I can tell like, oh, I'll probably like this, but I'm just not really in the mood. Then I just stop it, soft DNF. I know I'll come back to it later when I'm in a better mood. That means I'll enjoy the book more, and I'm giving the book the best chance at impressing me and like giving me the best experience if I'm in the mood for it, right? So yeah, so I want to continue those goals of DNFing early and often, continue mood reading, and then along with that, I have two other goals, which are that I want to read and talk about the books that I want to read and talk about, rather than just all the books that the book girls are talking about. It's really easy to get caught up in the FOMO of BooKtube and booktok and bookstagram. And I have found some good books that way, right? Like I wouldn't have discovered like Magnolia Parks without it. However, I don't want that to dominate my channel or my reading. I want to stay true to myself and my own reading enjoyment and preferences and my own opinions, and also like discovering books that I can share that no one else is talking about. So that's something I'm going to focus on in 2025. Okay, so first of all, the questions are down below. If you answer them, if you have a book platform, please tag me in it so that I can come watch or read your book tag. And then I have a question for you, which is, what is one book you would like me to read and talk about on this channel in 2025? So put that down in the comments. And if you're still here, but you don't want to answer the question, why don't you drop a star in the comments, because it's almost Christmas and I'm looking at the star at the top of my tree. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you got some good insight from this tag, that you've been enjoying my videos here for Bookmas. There's only a few left. Christmas is only a couple of days away. I hope you guys are having a wonderful season, and I'll see you all tomorrow.